This video is to show you how to get data off the data logger. Once you've plugged the data logger into the computer using the USB cable, all you need to do is go to your start button on the bottom left and choose Science. And inside that Science folder will be two links, usually one called Data Logger and one called Sensing Science Laboratory. If you've got both, choose Sensing Science Laboratory. And that'll bring up this window, and on that you choose the graph option. And sometimes it will come up here and asking you for the interface, and depending on your computer you might have to choose COM1 or COM4. If you're not sure, just use some trial and error till you find out which one you've got to use. And then I'll bring up this window here. Now because you want to collect data off the data logger, you go to this button here called Collect and use Collect Remote Data, and you might see you've got a whole lot of different sets of data to choose from. And you've got to find out the dates. Unfortunately won't be necessarily right. You've got to find out which one is yours, and hopefully by the duration or when you did it you'll be able to figure out which one's which. So let's choose the most recent one here. Let's go Retrieve, and that'll bring up some data here. This is a data of force versus time for someone's experiment this year. This is nice, but unfortunately you want to get this into Excel, which takes a few more steps. So you need to go File and Save As. And it's going to save this thing called a SID file. Now what I've done is on the student drive in 2013, if you go down to Faculties and then Science and then Year 8 and then OEI Data Logger, there's a folder here for all the OEI files. Just make sure you don't save over someone else's file. This is changed to this one. I don't want to save that. This is going to be called Example. You can call it what you wish. I'd recommend using your name to name your data logger files. I'm going to save that as an example file. Now you can close this down once you've extracted your data, and you need to open up Excel now. Now Excel doesn't normally read these data logger files, so you've got to help Excel find the data logger files. So you go File, Open, and you find the folder we just saved things in, which will be in the student drive, 2013, Faculties, Science, Year 8, OEI Data Logger, but there's no files there, which is not right, because we know there's files there. That's because Excel's looking for Excel files. You need to come down here and choose All Files, and then you can choose your file example. And it'll come up with this window here, and basically it's asking you, well, Excel's saying, I don't know how to read this file, can you help me read this file? And if you look down, you see that all these data here, there's commas in between, which means you've got to tell Excel by pressing Next that you want to put the commas are telling Excel to make a new column. So you click comma and you go Finish, and that'll present your data here. Now what you've got, all this information at the top is just background information. It's telling you your recording force, etc, 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 but the real data starts down here. So what I usually do is I get this data, and it might be quite long depending on how many samples you've taken. Oops, I've gone too far now. And I usually just copy that just across the side somewhere else. I'll leave a bit of a gap at the top, because your first column is usually time in seconds, and the second column is the thing you're recording. And if you've got two sensors, this will be column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, depending on what sensors you've got. But this is a force in newtons. What we're going to do now is we can now highlight this information, including the headings. And we can make a graph. Usually try insert, use a scatter graph. The first one's the best one to use usually. And there's our data. You can double click on these data lines and choose a solid line for a line. So it's going to put a line there as well. And as you can see, a lot of this, particularly for the people who are doing force, this stuff at the start is our just testing. This is the actual test itself. And this is just stuff that's after the test. So you can actually tidy your results up a little bit. You can actually hover the mouse over here and see that the results pretty much finished around the 5-second mark, and the results pretty much start around the 2-3 second mark. So what you can do is actually tidy up your results a little bit, because everything after 5 seconds we don't really need. So you can actually delete the data you don't want up to, let's say, 6 seconds. And we don't really need anything before 2 seconds either. I choose delete, and I shift the cells up so everything moves up. Now I can plot a new graph just with the data I want. insert, scatter, scatter graph, and there's the actual results. This is the little bump we're looking for. And don't forget in Excel these days to put titles on your axes. You've got to click on the graph once, then come up here and click on this thing. So you put time on your axis here and force here. For the girls who are doing force, the force you're looking for is the force of the hump of your test. So you've got to take a measurement here. So this says 3.3 seconds and minus 4.2 newtons. That means the datalogger sensor thought that 0 was actually minus 4.2. So your maximum peak down here is minus 9.1. So what you've got to do to figure out the actual size of your force, you've got to put the maximum and the minimum in. Our minimum was minus 4.2. Our maximum was minus 9.2. To actually find the force you used, you've actually got to find the difference or the height of this little bump. So it's just going to be minus 9.2 take away minus 4.2, which means minus 5 newtons. Now minus 5 newtons means you're pressing in, or a compression force. So the force required for this was a 5 newton compression force. And that's how you get your data off Excel. Other students who are doing timings might have to look at their graph and find out what time that the light went out and stuff, but that's how you make your graphs using Excel.